The conflict between the United States and Iran has entered one of the most dangerous and unpredictable phases in recent Middle Eastern history, evolving far beyond a limited military confrontation into a complex, multi-front regional war with global consequences. What initially began as a series of coordinated airstrikes and retaliatory missile attacks has now transformed into a broader strategic struggle involving multiple actors, economic choke points, and competing visions of regional dominance. At the center of this escalation lies a rapidly intensifying military standoff where both Washington and Tehran are signaling readiness not only to continue fighting, but to expand the scope of operations if necessary. The entry of additional actors, particularly Yemen's Houthi movement, has significantly widened the battlefield, while the possibility of a U.S. ground operation has introduced a new and potentially explosive dimension to the conflict. The United States has steadily increased its military footprint across the region, deploying thousands of additional troops, including Marines and airborne units, to reinforce its operational capacity. These deployments are widely seen as preparation for multiple contingencies, ranging from sustained air campaigns to more direct involvement on the ground. Reports indicate that Washington is actively considering options that could include securing key strategic points along Iran's coastline, particularly those linked to energy infrastructure and maritime trade routes. At the same time, Iran has responded with a combination of military resilience and strategic signaling. Tehran has sought to demonstrate that it remains in control of its critical infrastructure, especially Kharg Island, which has emerged as one of the most important flashpoints in the conflict. Located in the Persian Gulf, Kharg Island handles up to 90% of Iran's crude oil exports, making it a cornerstone of the country's economy and a highly valuable target in any escalation scenario. The island has already been the subject of major U.S. airstrikes earlier in the conflict, with more than 90 military targets reportedly hit during a large-scale bombing raid. Despite this, Iranian officials have consistently projected confidence, insisting that operations on the island continue without disruption and that security has been fully restored. Life is continuing and oil exports are proceeding without any problems. Security is completely established on the island, a senior Iranian official said, emphasizing stability in the face of growing international scrutiny. He further issued a direct warning to any potential aggressor, stating if any aggressor violates this Iranian island, they will certainly face the harshest response and will not return alive. These statements are not merely rhetorical. Intelligence and field reports suggest that Iran has significantly reinforced the island's defenses, deploying additional troops and reportedly laying both anti-personnel and anti-armor mines in anticipation of a possible assault. This reflects a broader Iranian strategy aimed at turning any potential ground invasion into a costly and prolonged engagement. The importance of Kharg Island is closely tied to the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical maritime choke points. The strait serves as a vital artery for global energy supplies, and its disruption has already had far-reaching economic consequences. The ongoing conflict has effectively turned the strait into a contested battlefield, with Iran seeking to leverage its control over the passage as a strategic advantage. In response, the United States has launched an extensive aerial campaign aimed at reopening the strait by targeting Iranian naval assets and drone capabilities. This campaign underscores the central role that energy security plays in the conflict, as both sides recognize the global implications of prolonged disruption to oil shipments. President Donald Trump has taken a particularly aggressive stance, framing the conflict as both a military and strategic necessity. Reflecting on past actions, he said, and then there was a big moment when I took out Soleimani. He continued, he was a vicious, horrible human being, but he was a great general. Trump has consistently emphasized that preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons remains a core objective. As president of the United States, I would never allow the world's #1 state sponsor of terror to obtain a nuclear weapon, he said, reinforcing a long-standing policy position. At the same time, Trump has portrayed ongoing military operations as overwhelmingly successful. He stated, "We're crushing Iran's military capacity, destroying their missile and drone factories." He went even further, claiming Iran's Navy is gone, their Air Force is dead, their anti-aircraft capabilities are totally dismantled. However, intelligence assessments present a more nuanced reality. Recent reports indicate that only about 1/3 of Iran's missile and drone arsenal has been destroyed, with a significant portion still intact or hidden in underground facilities. This suggests that Iran retains substantial military capability, particularly in terms of asymmetric warfare and long-range strike capacity. The gap between political rhetoric and battlefield reality highlights the complexity of the conflict. While U.S. and Israeli forces have achieved significant tactical successes, Iran's ability to absorb damage and continue operating has prevented any decisive breakthrough. Adding to the volatility is the widening scope of the war. The involvement of Yemen's Houthi forces marks a critical turning point. For the first time since the conflict began, the Iran-aligned group has launched missile attacks toward Israeli territory, signaling its formal entry into the war. A Houthi military statement declared the Yemeni armed forces have carried out their first military operation, targeting sensitive military sites. The group framed its actions as part of a broader regional resistance, aligning itself with Iran and other allied forces. This development significantly expands the geographic scope of the conflict, introducing new risks to key maritime routes such as the Red Sea and the Bab el Mandeb Strait. The Houthis have previously demonstrated their ability to disrupt shipping in these areas, and their renewed involvement raises the prospect of further economic and logistical disruptions. The broader regional context adds another layer of complexity. The conflict now spans multiple theaters, including direct U.S.-Iran engagement, Israeli strikes within Iran, Hezbollah activity in Lebanon, and Houthi operations from Yemen. This multi-front dynamic increases the likelihood of miscalculation and escalation, as actions in one theater can quickly trigger reactions in another. Recent reports indicate that the war has already resulted in thousands of casualties and significant damage to infrastructure across the region. Energy markets have been particularly affected, with oil prices surging sharply amid fears of prolonged disruption to supply routes. At the same time, diplomatic efforts have struggled to gain traction. While several countries, including regional powers, have attempted to mediate, no meaningful breakthrough has been achieved. The absence of a clear diplomatic pathway has contributed to a sense of uncertainty, with both sides appearing prepared for a prolonged confrontation. Trump has hinted at the possibility of negotiations, but has tied any potential agreement to specific conditions. They're begging to make a deal, he claimed, though independent reports suggest that Iran is not currently prioritizing negotiations and remains focused on maintaining its strategic position. In another statement, Trump emphasized the importance of reopening the Strait of Hormuz, saying they have to open up the Strait of Hormuz.
This reflects the central role that control over maritime routes plays in the broader conflict. Meanwhile, Iran has continued to pursue a strategy of resilience and deterrence. By maintaining pressure across multiple fronts and leveraging its geographic advantages, Tehran aims to increase the cost of any further escalation by its adversaries.
The situation remains highly fluid, with both sides continuing to adapt their strategies in response to evolving conditions. The possibility of a U.S. ground operation, particularly targeting strategic locations like Kharg Island, remains one of the most significant uncertainties. Such a move could fundamentally alter the dynamics of the conflict, potentially triggering a wider regional war. Analysts warn that the stakes extend far beyond the immediate region. The disruption of global energy supplies, the involvement of multiple actors, and the potential for further escalation all point to a conflict with far-reaching consequences. At its core, the war has become a test not just of military strength, but of endurance, strategy, and political will. Neither side has achieved a decisive advantage, and both appear committed to continuing the fight despite mounting costs. As the conflict enters this critical phase, the world is watching closely. The next steps taken by the United States, Iran, and their respective allies will likely determine whether the situation stabilizes or escalates into an even larger and more destructive confrontation. For now, the war remains unresolved, its outcome uncertain, and its implications profound.